You know, you wrote an article for Browns Wire, 5 Browns who could lose their roster spots to rookies. So we went offensive guard Michael Dunn, linebacker Tony Fields, wide receiver David Bell, defensive tackle Maurice Hurst or Siaka Ika, offensive tackle James Hudson. Take us through, and there you see the list, the 5 guys that could lose their roster spots. Take us through that and just kind of what you were thinking as you put that together.
The thing with Michael Dunn, I think Michael Dunn's story and how he comes into that 2020 playoff season and what he did was just phenomenal. And then he had some big starts in 21 for Joel Bitonio when they put Bitonio out to left tackle. But you know, ever since then, the injuries have really started to pile up for Michael Dunn, who's now north of 30. And he's just a guy that has spent a lot of time on injured reserve, a lot of time as you know, an injured scratch. And I just think they then go and get Zach Zenner, who's probably your swing guard this year. And there's also a chance that James Hudson becomes a guard, I think. But I just think Zinter comes in. He becomes the guard that can play right. That's his natural position. I know they're going to cross-train into left guard as well. And then you feel pretty good because you've got Whippler who can play some guard and play some center. And then you just kind of get younger. And I know Michael Dunn doesn't cost a lot of money, but you get younger and more even cheaper. And so I just think that Dunn, you know, they drafted his position specifically very high. So that's kind of same thing with David Bell. Is I don't know how many wide receivers they're going to keep. And now you're looking at Jamari Thrash, and you know how Andrew Berry works. He's not really going to cut draft picks this year that are high draft picks. He might cut guys in the 7th, so I don't see him moving on from Jamari Thrash. And I just think when I compare David Bell and Jamari Thrash, what's the ultimate decision maker for me? And that's physical athleticism and talent. And I think just from an athleticism and physical gifts point, Jamari Thrash beats out David Bell. So that's for me why I'd move on from that position. The defensive tackle position's really hard because they just drafted Ika last year, and we know that, you know, Barry doesn't like to move on from his draft picks that quickly. And they just signed Maurice Hurst, and he's been a really big, impactful player last year, and they bring him back. But you drafted 2. You drafted 2 defensive tackles. They're definitely not cutting Michael Hall, so one of those guys is probably going to go unless you think they'll keep 6 defensive tackles and run with 11 defensive linemen total. I'm not totally sure they're going to go down that route. So I think one or the other potentially is out because of that. It's kind of like a toss-up there. The thing about James Hudson is originally the Browns signed Jalen Sundle to a UDFA contract, and then all of a sudden when rookie minicamp came last week, he's nowhere to be found. He's not on the roster officially anymore. I can't find anything news-wise, so I think James Hudson's probably safe as a result, just because, you know, they ended up not bringing in the guy I thought they were going to bring in to replace him.
Yeah, and then the other one, Fields, you know, the Watson, Nathaniel Watson is a guy that they drafted and they like a lot.
Yeah, and Watson is so intriguing to me because you're talking about an off-ball linebacker leading the SEC in sacks. Like, come on. He's a situational pass rusher, but that wasn't his primary job. I think Watson will be fantastic on special teams, and that's kind of where Tony Fields has held on to his roster spot with some of the special teams. And I think the upside of Watson is a little bit higher. I think he's a little bit more physically gifted than Tony Fields. And I think ultimately you take the guy that can bring some pass rush and just some versatility and some things that Tony Fields just can't do physically.